And I will tell you, Android TV emerged at a very interesting time in our industry. We have, for the first time, we have a situation where we can, of course, reach consumers directly over the top, but we also have an extremely large audience that is continuing to access stuff in a very traditional way. And so Android TV came at a time when those two things started to come together. And it's a great solution for bringing those things together. And that is absolutely critical for operators at this time, because let's face it, 60% now in the US, 60% of pay TV subscribers also have some sort of online service that they're paying for. And that is a quite unique circumstance in our industry. So enabling that, bringing those two things together is such an important issue now for operators and for content providers. And we'll be exploring those issues in our panel this morning. So, who am I? My name is Colin Dixon. I'm founder and chief analyst at Endscreen Media. This is a free resource to you, by the way. Everything on my site is free. Everybody loves free. You'll find analysis, opinion, and information on the issues, brand new analysis, I should say, every single day. And there's a bunch of white papers and full reports up there, all available for you for free. So please be a frequent visitor. I'd love to see you and hear your opinions on those pieces. And I can tell you that I am going to be talking about this panel and the next panel on my site over the next couple of days. So please check in to hear some of the highlights that I pull out of our conversation that we have today. We have a great first panel. We're still waiting for one person to show up. Hopefully he'll show up before we get too deeply into the conversation. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and I'm going to pitch them an opening question. So, why don't we start with, I would like to start with Brendan, if I may. And the very specific reason why I want to start with Brendan. But Brendan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Brendan Thomas, head of distribution at Pluto TV. For those of you who aren't familiar, Pluto TV is a leading free internet TV service. We license content, program channels, and distribute them for free over applications, including Android TV, as well as outside of those applications.
So, one of the exciting things about Pluto TV, well, first of all, it's free, which is something I think we all love. But the interesting thing about Android, about Pluto, is that it's more of a platform. It's not just an application, right? So, can you talk about what it was like moving this platform onto the Android TV platform?
Sure, absolutely. So we were a launch partner with Android TV live channels, I want to say maybe 4 years ago. And we found building for Android TV to be a breeze, actually. And we think part of that is the wealth of, the depth of talent available developing for Android. It's a familiar platform. But we started on web when we launched 4 years ago, and then a few months afterwards, our first living room experience was with Android TV. So taking our channels, our infrastructure, our ability to program and distribute and get right into the living room, with this easy-to-use extension of Android mobile where it started, and now it's kind of obviously evolved into its own thing. Was really a tremendous way for us as a early stage startup at that point to quickly see, does our value proposition translate to the living room? Does this idea of unknown channels curated and programmed from when we launched initially YouTube content, and then where we are today, content from most of the major studios, broadcasters, and best of digital first into true broadcast quality TV stations. It allowed us to easily prove out kind of that minimum viable product 4 years ago to place we are today, where we're in 6 million plus living rooms.
Now, one of the unique features of Pluto is it's very much a traditional television type service. But one thing that is not very traditional about it is you can spin up channels like incredibly quickly, right? Talk to us about that process
sure.
and in particular implementing that on Android TV. Were there any special problems or issues that came up?
Absolutely. So one example from fairly recently, I'm not sure if this is real or fake news, but there was an article, I want to say maybe 2 months ago, about the current president complaining about TV in the White House. Again, not sure if that was real or fake news, but I guess the overheard line was something along the lines of, why is there no Gorilla channel? Netflix responded on Twitter with a kind of tongue-in-cheek, sorry, we don't have a Gorilla channel. But of course, Netflix doesn't really have channels. We took that as an opportunity and searched our 140 different content partner licensed database of content that we have ingested into the Pluto TV system and discovered, hey, we can actually put together a Gorilla channel very quickly. And 4 hours later, we launched one, available on all of our devices, including Android TV. Now, what's different or special about Android TV in this use case was not only was it available within the Pluto TV owned and operated application, but it was also available on live channels for Android TV users that use that feature, as well as recommendation cards, meaning if you're a Pluto TV user on Android TV, you would see that channel pop up right away on your home screen as an early option, which for us, discovery is hugely important, as we're usually launching channels that people have not heard of with content that they don't yet know that they love. So the discovery features for us are front and center.
So you mentioned the discovery features. How difficult or easy was it to integrate with that?
I think both implementations, live channels as well as recommendation cards, were less than 2 days of work for our engineers.
So
very straightforward.
Very quick, very easy.
Very straightforward.
So
yeah.
when you launched that new channel, it just plugged right into those recommendations?
Absolutely, yep. Using our existing integration, yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so Peter, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, my name is Peter Doherty, and I'm the founder and CTO for Think Analytics. We're a personalised content recommendations engine and a viewer analytics company. And like Colin was saying at the beginning, we view this really as a business tool. The ability to showcase content to the viewers that they might not find on their own, really being able to learn about their personal individual preferences, and be able to proactively recommend content to them, and also provide analytics for the operators to understand what's happening on their platform.
So Brendan nicely introduced us to the idea of recommendations. This is an area where you have a lot of expertise in Think Analytics. Talk to us a little bit about the value of recommendations in general, and specifically with Android TV.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in the recommendation space since 2005, 2006, and we've got over 70 operators worldwide, 200 million subscribers, all on our personalised recommendations platform. And really, the purpose of it is not just to deploy a bunch of algorithms. It's to be able to make a difference in the real world. It's to be able to get people to watch more shows, to watch more channels, to watch for longer, increase their engagement, show them that they're getting value for money from their subscription, or, if it was an OTT platform, keep them coming back and continuing to pay for that service. So it's vital that you really understand the content, that you understand the consumer, and that as part of a nice user experience, are able to present content to people in a whole variety of different ways. That's really fundamental. There's no one best way of recommending content to somebody, and a whole variety of different experiences, whether it's linear or VOD or catch-up content, being able to really understand that consumers' likes and dislikes, what their preferences are, and recommend that content to them. And so the ability to have that flexible experience, to be able to learn from what the user's watching, what they're not watching, and feed that back is very important. And that's, I think, one of the advantages you can see as part of Android TV is the ability to change the experience, to be able to react to what's happening in real time, and again, present the right content to people at the right time.
So let's stay with the harvesting of the information that you really use to drive the recommendation process. Talk to us a little bit about that process and how you process that data and then use it to drive those recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, data on obviously data is fundamental to the recommendation engine, and learning based on what people are watching, recording, purchasing, adding to their favorites. Any action that a user might take as part of the platform can be fed into our engine. So learning, let's say on Android TV, using the TV input framework to learn based on the user's channel zapping behavior, providing APIs so that you can easily learn from, VOD consumption. So all of that information about what the user's doing, whether they're explicitly telling you information or whether you're learning from their behavior, all of that information is fed into the recommendations engine. And then we have a whole variety of different recommendation techniques, both personalized and non-personalized, to then be able to recommend content that we know that consumer will like, that may be on a channel that they've never watched before, and like we're talking on Pluto TV, a channel that didn't exist yesterday. Again, having the ability to understand the content on those channels and, present that back to the user in a dynamic way, keeping it fresh, keeping it up to date with their viewing habits as they change over the day or, over time. Keeping that fresh and keeping the engagement with the user is absolutely vital.
And how, talk a little bit about how that actually works in the Android TV platform, because John, I'm sure, can tell us about the framework, but how do I now drive that framework to percolate those recommendations up?
Yeah, I mean, what we're able to do is we have an app that lives on the set-top box, and that's able to then capture that user behavior information, what you're watching on linear TV, your VOD consumption, and so on. So we can capture that information on the box and, send that back to the recommendation engine at the server side. It's then able to process that data in real time. It understands all the content that's available on the platform to then be able to make the recommendations. So there, it's really all about capturing that user, viewing data, what they're watching on linear, the VOD content that they're watching. So we're capturing that on the set-top box and then passing it back to the recommendation engine.
So it's pulling together quite a large data pool to actually figure out how to make those recommendations at the time that the user plugs in. Yeah,
I mean, I think the key is it's about, obviously, the volume. So we have deployments where you have 10, 20, 30 million users, but at the same time, it's about the individual. So at the point of making that recommendation, what really matters is that person and their individual viewing preferences. So at that point, you only need that user's profile. You need to understand their likes and dislikes. And that's really where you can make that difference, where you can, by understanding those preferences, be able to demonstrate that you can get people to watch more content, get them to watch for longer than they have done in the past.
Indeed. Thank you. John, why don't you introduce yourself and then I'll pitch you a question.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's John Stewart. My apologies if you thought the other John Stewart was going to be here. Sometimes I think Colin invites me for the advertising power on the signage. But I look after Android TV partnerships for the Americas.
You need to grow the beard longer
Yeah.
if you're going to pull off the other John Stewart. So one of the things that we've sort of been edging around, particularly with Peter's description of the recommendations engine and the data, one of the key features, and it's right here in the title of the whole session, is voice. So when I think about the voice capabilities in Android TV, It's very hard to just think about television. And I think this is one of the outstanding features about Android TV, is it's not just about the television, right? And the voice feature in particular is not just about the television. So why don't we start off with talking about the voice capabilities in Android TV, but I want you to expand that out into the whole world of screens that we use.
No, absolutely. So first off, we announced, I guess, last year at CES, bringing the assistant to Android TV. And so this past year at CES, so I like to say you couldn't fling a dead cat, not hit a sign talking about, hey Google, talking about the voice integration. So for voice on TV, first and foremost, it needs to be a great way to interact with the TV and your TV viewing experience. The power that we bring with Google's machine learning and artificial intelligence is being able to understand context for voice interaction and natural language processing that makes the interaction much more user-friendly and therefore more usable. If you've driven any car in the last few years that has voice integration for navigation or something to that extent, it's very difficult to learn the language, to speak to it, in order to get the right result out of it. And so what we're looking to solve is that very simple, you're talking to the person sitting next to you of, hey, what should I watch tonight? And you get some choices. Oh, only the recent ones, and there's recent ones. Only the top rated ones. And you get a further and further dig into content. As we all know, content is growing massively, and so it's very difficult as a user to kind of sift through it all and get to something that's really interesting to watch in that given moment. So that's first. And I think, with the power of Google behind voice, we're positioned pretty well to do that better than most in the market today. But extending beyond TV now that you have this hub of the home that's sitting there in the living room, there's other ways to interact with it and do different things. So with the power of the Android platform, which extends into Wear and IoT, as well as tablet and mobile, now you have these other experiences that you can do as well via voice. So like turning on the lights or ordering an Uber or ordering pizza. So it opens and extends beyond. As an operator, you can also do different things with voice too. In some countries, depending on where you're from, where there's a lot of prepay stuff, so you can just ask, hey, how many minutes do I have left in my cell phone plan? Top up the cell phone plan. So it opens other ways for service providers to provide services to their customers that make it just easy and less friction, as well as super engaging for the end user.
So tell us a little bit about how difficult it is for a solution like Pluto or an operator or somebody to actually plug into the voice system.
Super easy, right? Yeah, so it's getting easier by the day. So today we have actions on Google, and I'm not the assistant expert, so I'm not going to break down all the details of it, but there's several ways that you can integrate voice onto a device. And if you're on an Android TV device, we have other ways to integrate with on-device APIs. So if you say something like show me dramas, then an app can plug into the search API and surface that content. Or you can do a cloud integration with Google, and that has a quicker responses, and it's also more guaranteed quality of the result because we can validate that it was a drama that was being surfaced versus something else. So there's multiple ways to do that integration, and it's becoming easier and easier.
Very good. Mark, I haven't forgotten you, but I do want to ask Brendan, you're using the voice capabilities?
So we're at the beginning of our exploration of voice. I think like many content partners, we're excited by the early adoption. For us, the equation is a little different. We do have an on-demand library, but it's not our core feature. Our core focus is our linear channels, most of which are new channels that most people wouldn't have heard of unless you're a Pluto TV user. So what that means is voice is currently primarily for not necessarily discovery, but finding something you want. So you're looking for something by title, or you're looking for a particular actor or something like that. So in that way, it can be discovery, but you're starting with like a vector. For us, we're looking at surfacing content that you didn't know existed, quite frankly. So while we're exploring it, we don't yet have a whole lot to share there, but I will share. Yeah, the integration work doesn't seem to be too much of a challenge, and we're excited to have more to talk about there soon.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And in fact, I have to say, that's one of the things about when I'm using Pluto, is there's always something new. There's always a new channel. So I guess I wouldn't know to search for that channel by voice either, would I? Anyway, Mark, please.
Yes, hi, I'm Mark Evanson. I'm CTO of Amino Communications, and we provide devices for the service provider industry for broadcasters, cable, and IP, and a full line of Android TV devices.
So we've talked about some of the capabilities of Android TV, and we're going to be delving into those a lot more in the coming minutes. But it is very complete in itself, but it's not a complete solution for an operator. What are some of the things that are missing that you fill in?
Right, so one of the great things that Android TV brings to this space is Google coming in as a third party among device manufacturers and OTT providers, and providing the assurance of certification for both security, for content security, and also for features and functionality, so that you know as an app developer that your app is going to work correctly on Android TV device that's been certified. And we go through that certification process with our devices as well. But that certification covers a core set of features that have to be there. There are some extensions that are really helpful if you're a service provider, especially if you're just trying to deal with a legacy system. So for instance, MPEG-2 support is not a core part of the Android TV specification. We add that ability to our devices. Multicast is not part of core Android TV. A lot of our service providers need multicast support, so we've added that. EAS, which is the emergency alert system here in the United States, closed captioning. These are requirements for service providers to deploy a device and a service, and so we add those features and extend the basic Android TV to add those, as well as then take advantage of the OTT apps and the third-party content.
Now, one of the things that Peter talked a lot about was personalization of the experience. Talk to us about the customer management systems in the back end. That they also need to be integrated in here. Otherwise, how do I have a way of latching the personalization?
Exactly. So typically our approach is to go in with an in-home experience that then integrates with existing back-end systems. So unlike, I'd say, some of the other advanced UI systems that are available today that are really a replacement of the whole end-to-end system, ours is an in-home solution. So it's the devices and software that run on those devices, and then we'll talk to an existing billing system. So for instance, when there's a VOD transaction, we don't go in and talk to the end billing system. We talk to an intermediary system that's already there, that's been integrated with the billing and back office system, that has a subscriber management system, and use the same integration that's already existing. So it's what we like to call a frictionless integration, where you could have a home that's running Android TV right next to a home that's running a legacy device, and the only thing that's different is what equipment and what software is running in the home, but the back office systems stay the same.
So that brings up a really interesting question. Android TV, of course, runs on some very powerful boxes, but also not quite so powerful, more pedestrian set-top box. Is it difficult to get the performance that you're looking for from Android TV on a lesser platform? Is there a lower bound to a platform?
There is a lower bound. I think we've taken kind of a different approach at this is for legacy compatibility. Our 7 series devices, which we're shipping now, a lot of operators have elected to deploy using, let's say, a legacy software because they run Linux as well as Android TV, and they have the option then of upgrading to Android TV when they're prepared to do so. So it's not like you have to take it all at once. You can start with a rollout of Android-ready devices, and when the time comes, convert them over and have a seamless, over-the-network upgrade path.
Indeed. Brendan, I want to ask you another question about porting into this space. Now, you were available on other platforms before you moved to Android TV, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that porting process? Was it hard? Was it easy? How long did it take? Give us some feel for that process.
Sure. So our roadmap was pretty simple. We started on web, as many do. We had a desktop application, which was just a web wrapper, and then we launched mobile shortly after that. Of course, that means iOS and Android. Our value proposition is free TV. It appeals to a wide range of customers, but especially those looking to save money, and the budget-conscious Android crowd was a fast adopter of our service. So we very quickly invested heavily in our Android mobile experience. And then when Android TV became an option, we were pleased to see how straightforward it was to take some of the work that we had done for that and extend it to that. That was just a little bit before my time at Pluto, but I remember the final launch days wrapping up that it seemed like the general consensus was this was a lot less work than we thought it was going to be. And now it's an environment where we do a lot of our testing because of that ease of deploying applications and services into it.
So, am I right in assuming that it is now you're on that platform? It's actually relatively easy to find developers to help push the development forward on those platforms?
It is. It's easy, relatively. It's still kind of a specialized subset of developers, but if you're familiar with Android development, you can make the jump very quickly, especially if you're familiar with video. We've also found there's not just volume of developers, but quality of developers in that space as well. More senior, more experienced. It's one of the reasons why that's the platform we do A/B testing new features on, the ability to kind of rapidly prototype and try something new out.
So, sorry, John, did you have something? No? Peter, Brendan mentioned A/B testing. Talk to us a little bit about that process in the context of a platform like Android TV.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that really enables the operator to be able to change the experience and learn from what users are actually doing, not just based on gut feel or what you think might work, but by actually trying it out. And that's something that we also support is the ability to run A/B tests with no change to the experience if you don't want to. Just learning, having whether it's a different recommendation technique or some other different aspect of the experience that's changing, being able to run that without changes on the device itself, without having to roll out any firmware or other updates. But being able to run that test, measure exactly what's happening, understand the difference that it's making, try that out on 5-10% of your user base, make sure that the change you've made is making that positive difference. It's driving, whether it's consumption or purchases, whatever the purpose of that test was. Being able to execute that test, measure, and then again, presuming that test did what you expected, push that out to 100% of the base and be able to then have that velocity to run test after test after test, not having a 6-month cycle, but being able to do things and make these kind of changes. You could do it in minutes, but certainly within days in a production environment. And it really accelerates the business benefits that operators can gain from this type of technology by basing your decisions based on hard facts rather than hoping.
We do the same thing on Android. So for our retail devices, we do A/B testing for like system UX or the home screen. So we'll test that and we'll run it out to 5 or 10% of the user base, and then based on statistics coming back, decide whether we push that forward to the rest or not.
Brendan, A/B testing?
Same, yeah. I mean, the ability to test with a small scale of users, rapidly get data and say this is what we hoped for, or this is not, and then go back and make some decisions. But we test and iterate there on Android TV, and then we roll it out to other devices where it's more of a flip the big switch. But that's only after we validated that it's working.
So can I ask you about you're doing this A/B testing and you're deciding to add new features. How frequently do you update the client, and how long does it actually take to do that in the Android TV environment?
Sure. So we do 2-week sprints. We're usually pushing updates at least once every 2 weeks. Because of that, our development cycles usually we're pushing a day or two then towards the end of that sprint. So it's a really rapid environment. But again, our ability to quickly roll out to 5%. See how that's doing, feel comfortable then, knocking it up to 25, 50%, and then 100% allows us to do that a little more rapidly. With other platforms, simply because of that, lack of insurance or the lack of feeling of security with rolling out, the development cycles tend to be a little slower because we then roll up what we've iterated on in the Android environment and then do more of a bigger update all at once.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch context a little bit here. I think there are probably some people in this room who are still a little bit nervous about IP as a platform for their high-value content. So security is still, probably there are still some people who are concerned about security. Let's talk about Android TV as a secure platform for premium content services. So why don't we'll start with you, Mark, and let's talk about traditional pay television security and mapping that into a more open context brought to us by an Android TV platform.
Well, okay. So we have integrated several DRM and CIS systems with Android TV, and there is a framework for doing so. Android TV comes natively with Widevine and Play-Ready support. We've added and enhanced that, and essentially all of the major CAS operators have adopted and make available a version of their software that can be integrated into Android TV, and it's trusted and secure. And so I think that maybe 3-4 years ago there were concerns about vulnerabilities, but those have largely been addressed by the TE and other features of Android TV that have really tightened it up and made it a world-class secure platform.
Very good. And John?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so Android, if you think about it, like we have Google Play Movies on the platform, so if there's concern, like we have 4K content on there, so what we require from a hardware implementation and Widevine L1 plus Play-Ready, all the movie studios have certified this, so any Android TV device is should be secure after certification out of the box. So to getting additional content on there, especially if you use those services, are easy to do. And then as Mark pointed out, we've done a lot of work in the last year with a Media CAS API. So we've heard feedback from our satellite and cable partners that this was complicated, especially from an upgrade perspective. So we wanted to create a common set of APIs to make that simpler. And the feedback has been positive so far.
Brendan, how are you protecting the Pluto TV content?
Sure. So we're fortunate in that we've not yet been required by our content partners to implement DRM across our ecosystem. However, we know that's coming, and that's going to be a requirement moving forward. So while we haven't had to cross that hurdle yet, I do know, familiar with our kind of internal checklist, and Android TV is the one that always checks off green in terms of what we need to implement for each individual partner. The challenges we see are with other platforms. We're on 18 different platforms, so just about anywhere you can watch video. You either can watch Pluto TV today, or you will be able to in the not too distant future. But some of those are just really not DRM friendly, which has been really a challenge for us as we move forward to better and better content where those considerations come into play.
Now, one thing that I think is very familiar about the Pluto TV environment is that it's ad supported. Talk a little bit about that facet of Pluto TV, and maybe you can talk about. I think you do client-side insertion, or do you do server-side insertion?
We do server-side, yeah. We started client-side, we went to server-side.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit, and then let's talk about that in the context of Android TV, and maybe getting back telemetry on the ads that were watched, and et cetera. Please go.
Sure. So this may get a little out of my technical depth, but the high level for us is we did start with client-side ad insertion. For those of you who aren't familiar, we're very much like live TV. So for an hour of content, actually a little bit less than a live TV ad load, we'll have about 20% or 12 minutes of ads broken up into ad pods, just like TV. So you may watch 10, 15 minutes of content, see 2 or 3 minutes of ads, go back to content, etc. But it's programmatic, so it's all addressable advertising inventory. So while you and I may be watching the same content on a channel like Pluto Movies, which is where we highlight kind of our blockbuster hits, the same movie, when we go to an ad pod, we'll see different ads. And then we'll come back to the content at the same time. So it's live TV with programmatic advertising. So that requires some information from the client to make that unique. We pass that through. We have an in-house proprietary ad stitching solution that we built. Of course, there are vendors on the market that have solutions like that. We chose to build our own for a few reasons, but one of the largest was we use that system also for interstitials, fade-ins, lead-outs, all the dynamically created glue that makes our channels feel like TV channels rather than just a playlist of content. And so that stitches content, the glue, the branded interstitials together along with the ads, and then delivers that as a single HLS stream to the client. So what's helpful there for us is the fact that Android TV has great HLS support, including support for discontinuity flags, which is important for our specific implementation. And then the fact that we have the ability to pass through information from the client in a way that respects privacy, but then allows us to programmatically, about a minute in front of the ad pod, go out and say, hey, we've got 6 ad opportunities coming up, or more accurately, we've got 2 minutes of ad opportunities coming up. Give me some 30s, give me some 15s, and let's figure this out. Assembles that dynamically, then delivers it, and it's stitched on the fly, so it delivers it with support from those discontinuity flags into the native Android TV player on that device, which delivers a seamless live TV-like experience for the end user.
So you're leveraging programmatic platforms to fill most of your ad avails these days?
I think so. So we definitely started heavily programmatic. We've recently, I think last year, we announced we brought on board Rich Kalachi, former SVP at Turner, of ad sales, as our CRO. And I think since the beginning of the year, doubled our sales team. So I know at the end of last year is when we switched to more directly sold than programmatic. But we're still, trafficking things in a dynamic way, of course. So we'll still see different ads depending on how that, even if it's a directly sold campaign, how that campaign is targeted.
Very good. So John, I think before I'm going to ask for audience questions in just a second. Before we get to the audience questions, maybe we should deal with a couple of the things up front that usually come up in those sorts of questionings.
Sure.
So, some of the things about who owns the customer, do I have to have the Play Store? Can you just deal with some of those issues that might be in the forefront of people's minds?
So the number one that comes up is data. So data collection and what Google has access to. And so when that question comes up, you have to break it into two elements. So there's platform level data and then there's application level data. So application is easiest to understand because most people integrate Netflix or something like that. So Netflix has whatever data they collect based on their terms of service with their user. Google, we have ours based on our terms of service with users for things like Play and Play Movies and YouTube. When you look at Android, the platform, it collects no PII. So we collect information from the platform just to understand the health of the platform and improve it. So data metrics about how information is moving between memory and processing, and if there's bottlenecks there, and things that we can use to improve the platform itself. But no PII is collected at the Android level. And as I always like to say, it's open source. So if you don't believe me, read the code. You see, we collect no data. What else was it? So you had another point too.
So requirements to have Play, launching into a specific app at boot, those types.
Okay, yeah. So the requirements for there's one of your pre-questions was something, the difference between operator tier and Android TV itself, and so there are different requirements, but depending on what you're launching. So operator tier is nothing more than a program on top of Android TV, and it's targeted to our operator community. It gives them more control over the UX, the whole the home screen. They control that, and we have some requirements around just placement for easy access to all the apps that are installed. So you have like an app store link on screen 0, and then when you land on that page, then you should have a way to see all the installed apps. So you can't decide to do Android TV and then hide all the apps so the users can't find them. The idea is to create this Play Store or this ecosystem so that apps are discoverable. So the requirements from Google for placement with any Android TV deployment is we have 6 apps that are required. So Play Movies, the Play Store itself, obviously, YouTube. I'm going blank on the others, but those are the main ones for TV. And then other than that, it's up to an operator or an OEM who maybe you're a TV maker and you want to create an Android TV device. You can do your own placement deals for any other thing, any other content that you want, and that's totally up to you and how you do that.
Very good. It would seem to be counterproductive, I think, to try and block a lot of the apps, right? Isn't that one of the purposes of moving to an Android TV platform?
Well, yeah. So that's the thing. When you build a platform, you're always balancing the needs of the operator, the needs of the OEM, the needs of Google, and the needs of the end user. And so you end up in this place where you want to be great for everybody, but there's always trade-offs. So we try to balance that as fairly as we can. And as part of that, that means for our app ecosystem, we can't have blacklisted apps on a device, because the reason why Android is so popular and we have millions of apps and thousands of partners who develop for the platform is because they know that when they write for Android, that the probability or possibility of their apps or their content being discovered is greater, because Google holds that position and tries to create a very level playing field.
Very good. And okay, so we'll be covering a lot more about the operator tier aspects, I think, in our next panel session. So that's good. Now I'm gonna turn to you for your questions. So if you have a question, be thinking about that and get your hand up so that I can call on you. We already have. I think we can probably dive in. Yes, sir. You were first. That was very quick.
Discovery through voice. You guys talked a little bit about that, and as I can see, I use Google Home a lot in Google Assistant when I'm home, and it always ends up with me watching Modern Family or Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I love how it picks up how I misspell or say Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and it still starts it. But how is the future of discovery work when it comes to voice? How are we going to discover content when we can't see the artwork, or we can actually see the content ourselves?
Yeah, so it's a tough problem to solve if you only have one surface. So with Android TV, you have the visual, right? So when you have your Google Home at home even, and you say, hey, what's on tonight, you can get a visual display. We have some partners that are looking to launch, I think if you come by our booth, we have a visual kind of assistant, so you can even have visibility into what you're seeing and some of the choices. But obviously, if you have voice only with no visual, it's you have to know what you're looking for, or you have to listen a lot, because you'll get a list read back to you, and you have to choose the third one. I think as we're moving forward, you'll see a lot more integration with the TV set, where even if it's off and you say, hey, what's on tonight, the TV can then fire up and you get a visual cue and a list of content, which is easier to dig through.
Actually, this must be a concern for you, Brendan, right? Because most of the things or many of the channels, people may not even know to ask for.
So, and then that's why John's example of what's on tonight is our perfect question to answer. We sometimes joke that Pluto TV is the solution for when you don't know what you want to watch. So when you're sick of scrolling through tile after tile after tile, because our channels are pre-programmed and they're easily organized by category, and there's over 100 of them, you can just dive right in and there's content right away. You only have to make one tiny decision and then jump right in. So we're looking forward to being able to answer questions like what's on right now, what's on tonight, with the future of voice search and discovery.
Will we be able to adapt it to our mood and, like, depending on how we're behaving during the evening versus the morning?
Here's hoping.
Yeah. Yeah, so when it comes to recommendations, so actually that's a better question for Think, because the way that the platform handles recommendations is really up to each individual app maker. So you would plug in your own app recommendation, and then when I say what's on tonight, the way the back end works is it hands it to all the apps, and Pluto would respond with their list based on their integration with Think Analytics. I just made that up. But get recommendations for that particular user, and then that would get surfaced to you on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, that is a scenario that we support today already. Understanding the different preferences or the viewing habits that people have, whether it's on their Android TV versus their mobile device, or different times of day, different days of the week. Everybody has said there's nothing on. And of course, the perfect response to that is, well, there absolutely is something on. The problem is you don't want to click 50 times to find that content, and that's really where we come in. It's really understanding the consumer and being able to surface that content when you say, what's on right now, show me something. I don't want to have to work more to be entertained. I I want to be entertained now. So show me something that's on now that matches not only my global preferences, but what's happening right now as well.
And I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there for this first part. I'm sorry we didn't get to your question, but stick around because these guys will be sticking around, so maybe we can catch that question at the end. So I want to thank you all gentlemen for your great input. Please exit the stage. Leaving your microphones behind. Thank you.